Hello everyone, and welcome back to another review. I'm technically still on hiatus, so this isn't supposed to be considered a full review. I'm just going to be talking about the sound impressions that I get from this item. I can say it's a comfortable in-ear monitor. Comes with many features which I'll be showcasing in the video itself, but I really want to just focus on the sound in this one to keep the review a manageable size for the upload rate that I have in this place. So, the Noble Sage has what I describe to be a slight sheen over the sound that somewhat protects it from some of the dismissive comments made by some people who dislike balanced armature IEMs. The decay, which is still very abrupt, lingers slightly more than other IEMs I've heard in this category, which are balanced armature. It leaves a slight reverb over the music that I personally find quite pleasing, but it's not referenced at all by any means. Staging width is quite average. I found it to be quite narrow, in fact, and imaging is alright, even though it can get kind of like three-pronged. I don't get quite the out-of-head experience from this IEM that I would from certain earbuds even, but I must really commend the seal and isolation, which is a no-brainer for a decent IEM in my opinion. The bass has body to it, which I can appreciate, although I do feel the impact is slightly softer than I'd like. Kick drums feel full and certainly command the listener's attention, but there's certainly something missing from it being a truly punchy sound. Extension is also adequate, but nowhere near bottomless, even with the best fit imaginable. Bass texture also feels a little smoother than I'd fully enjoy personally. For example, the bass guitar in Enter Sandman by Metallica kind of blends in with the guitars and doesn't really stand out quite as much as I know it can in the master mix. In no way does this mean the bass is unresponsive or even muted. I find it quite adequate for the overall performance of this IEM, but it just is not the defining feature. What the defining feature may be, however, is the mid-range. It's not incredibly mid-forward, but the mid-range of the Sage makes vocals and guitars a priority. Like the bass, the experience is not the most refined or textured in what I assume is available from the IEM market overall, but it's a clear step above other IEMs that I reviewed in the past. And the lower mid-range is not dipped, which is something I personally strongly dislike from any piece of audio gear, but it isn't hiked either. Its presence on the Sage means that acoustic guitars don't sound hollow, and distorted guitars have a decent crunch to them, and male vocals retain their body. To continue the subject of male vocals, there is enough texture in the mid-range to quite adequately display the grit behind Bob Seger's perfectly imperfect Turn the Page track from the Back in 72 album. The vocal sits right at the center of the song overall in both mix and the Sage's production, and is definitely the highlight of the experience. But that being said, I can't help but point out that the overall tonality of the Sage is a bit artificial in nature. This may have to do with the smooth over transition between the mid-range into the treble, or even the treble itself, but there's this dip feeling in the region that doesn't quite let violins or orchestral music soar quite as much as they should. I do feel this is a mild complaint, however, if you factor in what the Sage is trying to do in the total, noble audio lineup, and variety is the spice of life after all. But the fact of the matter is that there exist individuals like myself who have it in them to appreciate but avoid in-ear monitors with hiked treble, as the sting of a balanced armature dry spike is something I'm very sensitive to, and the Sage is quite rolled off in this regard, although not quite as much as IEMs that I've tried in the past, but I do feel that this would be a deal breaker for IEM connoisseurs who want to chase a more reference sound at this price even. So to sum it up, I really do like the Sage, although I may not seem like it in this review. I've used it extensively outdoors for several months now, having bought myself a pair off Headfi earlier this year. Now what draws me is its mix of a smooth mid-range that isn't dipped sounding, and its ability to separate instruments in a mix quite well, and it's a very good all-rounder, in my opinion. But this is highly subjective, however, like all reviews, due to me viewing them from this particular angle. And that angle is easy listening, and not in any way critical listening. So, thank you for watching this quick review, sound impressions of the Noble Sage, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.